So a couple weeks ago, after Miami beat Ohio State, I posted this video, which made Miami fans lose their flirkin' mind. Which you'll understand that reference if you played Guardians of the Galaxy.
I just want to say that was a really nice win by Miami last night against Ohio State. And as a Notre Dame fan, I'm just being honest. I'm glad that you guys are making the most out of the opportunity that was given to you unfairly and unjustly. I'm glad you're taking advantage of the moment you didn't earn. But hey, look, a win's a win. That was a solid win. I just want to say congrats. And if you go on to win a national championship, one, I'll be happy for you. I will. Two, as a Notre Dame fan, I think it's warrant that we'll take 12% of the national championship. I think 12% is fair. So go on, do your thing, win out, win a title. 12% to Notre Dame. What do you say?
All right, so clearly I was just trolling, right? I even put it in the comments and in the caption of the video. But Miami fans, shit, like fucking calm down, right? Well, with that being said, since I posted that video, Miami went on to beat Ole Miss, 31-27, and now are playing Indiana in the national championship game. Indiana's run has been really solid as well. You're talking about first beating Alabama, after beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, stomping Alabama 38-3, beating Oregon, I mean, handedly, 56-22, which Oregon was my pick personally to win a national championship. So, listen, our matchup is set. January 19th, the college football playoff national championship, number 10 Miami versus number 1 Indiana. Congratulations to both teams, right? I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I hate it not being in the playoffs, but that's fine. It is what it is, right? Like, even though in that video I was poking fun at Miami a little bit, the fact is that they've capitalized on this opportunity, and they can say all they want about, like, oh, we deserve it, like, we should be in there, we won head-to-head, blah, blah, blah. You were on the fucking bubble. Okay, like, you were on the bubble. It was a toss up on whether or not you were going to get in. So don't fucking come at me like, oh, we deserve this. We knew we were going to be here all day. There is not a fucking person on the face of this earth that thought the national championship this year was going to be Miami and Indiana. But I'm here for it, right? Like, I think that both teams are really, really good. I think they are. Miami's speed is unreal. And I was kind of hoping, like, if Miami ended up did making it, I was kind of hoping to see a Miami-Oregon matchup because to me, that's almost like arena football in college, on a college field. I mean, both teams are extremely fast. Miami's defense, I think, is pretty solid. But Indiana, what the fuck have they been, like, where did this all come from? Like, first of all, their head coach is just a genius, and like how they've turned around this program in such a short amount of time, and to be this dominant. I mean, to listen, I think you can say what you want about the Alabama game. I don't think Alabama deserved to be in there. I'm not saying that Notre Dame should have been over Alabama or whatever. I'm just taking Alabama for what it is. They shouldn't have been in the playoffs because they had two losses and they lost in the SEC championship game against Georgia. So I just don't think that a three-loss team should have been in the conversation. And if you're going to say that conference championships are super important, if you're going to say that playing in a conference is super important, then there should be stakes if you lose the fucking SEC championship game. That gives you your third loss, right? With that being said, Alabama, they were just lucky to be in. Oregon, though, what they did to them in the Peach Bowl, that was impressive. 56-22, like, Indiana has this mentality. They, like with the Heisman quarterback, they are poised to win this game and be this amazing story. I just don't know if they will. Like, I think both, whoever wins the national championship, whether it be Miami or whether it be Indiana, both of these are going to be really, really great stories to be able to tell. Now, personally, I don't really like Miami, but taking my bias out of it, they are a really good football team. So, who's going to win this game? If you twisted my arm behind my back and said, Andrew, you have to pick a winner, I don't know how you could not pick Indiana to win this game with the routes that they've had. Look, their schedule, it's not like they played some kind of huge power schedule by any means, but listen to some of these wins this year, right? So obviously a couple of non-conference games. They beat Indiana State, their cross state rival, 73-0. and beat Illinois 63-10. But these are teams that no one cares about, right? You also beat Iowa 20-15. At the time, Iowa was really good. You beat Oregon earlier in the season already. Beat Michigan State 38-13. You steamrolled UCLA 56-6, and then obviously continuing your way through the Big Ten, beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game 13-10, beating Alabama again 38-3, 56-22 against Oregon. I think you've got to pick Indiana to win this game. I don't know how you pick Miami unless if you're a Miami fan. And that's fine. Like, congratulations for being in the national championship. That's awesome. Notre Dame was in the national championship last year, and you fucking let us know that we lost and we shouldn't have been in this year. So I don't know. My heart tells me that I want to see Miami win this because I feel like it is a better story with the team on the bubble winning again. And I think for the college football playoff committee, I think you're going to want to see Miami because I think then you're giving some weight and gravitas to the fact that those last teams fighting to get in means something and they make a difference. But my head tells me Indiana's going to win this game. What do you guys think? Drop it in the comments. January 19th, head-to-head for the national championship. Indiana or Miami? All right, let's shift our gears to the NFL. And the playoffs are already underway. As of recording this podcast, we have already had a handful of playoff games that have already been played, and winners have already been made. So far let's just break it down first. Like for the NFL playoffs, Denver and Seattle are the number one seeds in both their conferences, right? And you've had a couple games already been played. You had the Rams who beat Carolina, which I don't know if that was really much of a shock. I know Carolina came in with a higher seed, but the Rams have been pretty good, right? And then you also had the Bears beating Green Bay, which again is not a shocker. Obviously two rivals, two division rivals there. I guess I was a little bit more surprised by the score, 31-27. Like I kind of figured Chicago would have handled them a little bit better than that, but hey, it is what it is, right? So, a couple other games left to play. So today, 49ers at 3:30 play Philadelphia in Philly. I think that the 49ers are going to win that game. I'm a 49ers fan, so I'm biased, but I think they're a better team than Philadelphia. I don't know if they'll be able to beat Chicago in the next round, but we'll get to that here in a minute. Then also today you have Buffalo beating Jacksonville, which I just don't see a world where Jacksonville can beat them. I know Jacksonville's a higher seed, but Buffalo, and man, Josh Allen. The more I watch Josh Allen, the more I really, really love his character and how he plays and his drive and his heart. Like, he is a fucking solid quarterback and just a good dude. And then you also have the Chargers playing at New England. New England bouncing back this year, being 14-3, number 2 in the AFC. I think New England probably wins that game. And then tomorrow night for Monday Night Football, you have Pittsburgh, who is lucky to be in the fucking playoffs, against Houston, who might have the best defense out of all the teams that are playing right now in the NFL playoffs. So some games still left to play. What does it look like long term? I think at the end, when we're looking at who's going to play in the Super Bowl, my early predictions, aside from obviously it's easy to say because a couple games have already been played, I don't see Seattle coming out of the NFC. I know that they've been really good this year, 14-3, number 1 in the NFC. I just don't see it happening. I could see them losing to the Rams next round, but if they ended up making to the NFC Championship game, I just think the Bears are really good, and so. I see Chicago making the Super Bowl, which I mean, good on them, right? I think your Super Bowl matchup though happens in the second round of the AFC. If these two teams were in different conferences, these would be my two teams to play in the Super Bowl, and that would be Denver and Buffalo. I think both of those teams are really solid, and I think that Buffalo, man, I just want Josh Allen to win. I just really he's probably my favorite player in the NFL right now. So Buffalo, Denver, assuming Buffalo beats Jacksonville today, playing in the second round. I also think Houston has a nice shot. I think ultimately Buffalo ends up making it to the Super Bowl. I think you're gonna have a Buffalo Chicago matchup for Super Bowl. What is it? Is it 50? Super Bowl 50? I think so. Super Bowl 50. So yeah, there's not a lot here. Like I don't see any, um low seed really making it too awful far in the playoffs unless you're talking about Buffalo, and I think at 6, like I don't see them as a low seed, right? Like I mean they're obviously they're 6th seed, but I see them as a much better team than that. So listen, NFL at the end of the day, do I believe it's scripted? No, I don't. If I think if it was scripted, I think that you'd have Patrick Mahomes playing in the playoffs again, right? With all that being said, I care less and less about the NFL nowadays, and I just don't know if like a Super Bowl matchup between if it ends up, let's say it ends up being chalk and it ends up being Denver and Seattle, like it doesn't really interest anyone. So that's why I think Josh Allen making the Super Bowl would be the headline story there for me. I really like Josh Allen. But with all that being said, who do you think is going to be in the Super Bowl for the NFL playoffs? Did your team make it? Are you a Cowboys fan? Are you sitting at home saying next year's our year? Let me know in the comments. Drop it down below. So you remember when you were playing ball and you were younger and you were going to away games and you hop on the bus and you have these really stupid ass conversations, these hypothetical conversations about real life sports or fictional sports. Well, we're adults now and we're going to make that a segment of the podcast. So today we're talking about Blitzball. Now you heard the intro to the show. You saw the video, the opening for Final Fantasy X. Honestly, Final Fantasy X is one of my favorite games of all time. But that opening to the game is phenomenal. That opening into Blitzball, forget what the graphics were back, 25 years ago when this game was released. Those graphics hold up now. Like that, the cut scene and everything, filling up the stadium with water, the cheering fans, Titus, getting ready to be able to play. He opens his eyes, the music comes on. Man, it's so good. And for Final Fantasy games, that music, like, it caught me a little bit off guard because I'm a rock guy myself, but Final Fantasy music typically isn't that, right? So the music to that opening for Final Fantasy X was just, I don't know, phenomenal. Like I love every second of it, right? But for the Benchwarmer Chatter, like, I wanted to talk about today, like, could Blitzball be a real sport, right? Like, and would it work? Could you actually physically play Blitzball? And so we're breaking that down today. So let's talk about the sport itself. So first things first, it would have to be highly popular for it to be successful. You couldn't just have casual Blitzball fans. Like, so in the world of Spirit for Final Fantasy X, it is their end all be all for love and passion when it comes to sport. And if you don't know the story of the game, minor spoilers here, but the big overall, I guess, pending doom of the world of Spira is this creature called Sin. And when too many people are gathered together in one place, Sin will come and destroy everything. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but it's highly, big potential that if a large crowds get together, Sin's going to be there. And so knowing that, people with Spira still get together for their love of Blitzball. And on the surface, you're like, well, that's fucking dumb. Like, why would you get everyone together when you know there's a potential chance of Sin coming? But us as sports fans, if that same thing was happening, but in America, but it was NFL football, we would still have fucking fans that would go watch that game. So, sports just does something different to us. We have a very unique love and passion for the love of sports. Blitzball would have to be the peak of that. The biggest reason why is because this sport would be so ridiculously expensive to actually do. Like, it would have to be a luxury sport. Just the sheer mass alone of trying to build a stadium and housing an actual physical sphere to be able to house that much body of water, like, it just it would be insane. So if Blitzball were actually played exactly like it was in Final Fantasy X, it just wouldn't be a sport. Again, it would be one of the most expensive human endeavors on the entire planet. In order to make it work in reality, you would have to be looking at a couple of main factors, and we're going to break those down today. So, one, the infrastructure, two, the equipment, and three, the insurance costs. Because, yeah, like pro athletes are always insured, and this would be ridiculously expensive for the insurance for this. So, let's talk about the infrastructure for a second, right? Because I want to break this down and talk about, like, could this physically and actually be possible? So the first thing you'd have to do is you'd have to have a place for them to play, the stadium itself. Now, the average cost of a standard professional stadium is somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 million. Could easily even be up in the billions of dollars to be able to construct a stadium. In fact, if you look, like right now, I'm going to Google the cost of making the Cowboy Stadium. Cost of Jerry Jones's stadium. Let's see what Google says. So, yeah, so you're looking at a $1.15 to a $1.13 billion endeavor just to make Jerry's World in Dallas, which is a phenomenal stadium. I hate the Cowboys, fuck the Cowboys, but that stadium is absolutely amazing. So, in order to make this work, it would literally be I think every stadium you would have would be arguably the most expensive stadiums ever built. The main reason why is because the tank of water, a 50-meter spherical tank, would roughly hold about 17 million gallons of water. And to put that into context, the Georgia Aquarium's largest tank that they have is 6.3 million gallons of water. So you're talking about triple the amount of the largest aquarium tank, one of the largest aquarium tanks that are out there, just to be able to play the sport itself. And the weight, you're talking about an estimated 140, 150 million pounds of water. And arguably what's going to be a snow globe, right? A glass sphere. Like, this would, the physics alone for Blitzball would be difficult to overcome. But to be able to have a place to actually be able to play, like, that's going to be fucking insane. And then the maintenance behind it, like, you're talking about just an electric bill in order to run the pumps and the life support systems for the water would be estimated at about $1 million per month. So you're talking about, at minimum, just to be able to keep the water fresh throughout the course of the year. Let's just say Blitzball took the course over 6 months. You're talking about $6 or $7 million a year, just in season, let alone off season, to be able to have maintenance for the stadium, right? And then so you would have to be looking at places, and we're going to break this down here in just a few and kind of talk about some of the cities that we think that could house it. But let's just say you had roughly 8 teams across the globe. This would have to be a national sport, because you couldn't, like in America, there's 32 NFL football teams. You couldn't have 32 blitzball teams in the U.S. Like, first, there's not enough cities that could financially support having a blitzball team. And then there's also the space factor. Like the stadiums are massive, and you would have to be able to have the room in order to do it. You couldn't just, like, right now they're rebuilding they're building a new stadium in downtown Oklahoma City. Like, you couldn't just be like, oh, okay, well, let's take over a couple of blocks and we'll put a blitzball stadium there. So you would have to have the room in order to be able to do it, and then of course the financial support behind it, which would be insane. So I think this would have to be a global sport. So you're talking about roughly about 8 teams across the entire globe, very much like Olympic style, where every country kind of is represented, or countries represent their own teams or whatever. And I'm sure, like in sports, you're going to have crossover. Like, if it's not a country thing like the Olympics, you would have players who would go and play for other teams, similar to what you do in soccer. But like, again, it would just be like the finances behind it alone would just be insane, right? So, but let's say you found a way to be able to make that work. Let's say you found a way to be able to build a stadium. You found a way to be able to pick up the cost in order to do it. What about the game itself, right? Because blitzball is 2 5-minute halves, so it's a very short game. Obviously, I think you would probably have to change that, because could you imagine a sporting event this magnitude only being like 10 minutes long. So I think you would have to figure out a way to be able to extend the game. But you couldn't have a player just go down there and hold his breath for 5 minutes, like in a half. And the, not to mention the clock stoppage, the physical nature of Blitzball, which we'll get into here in a second if you've never seen, the game being played on Final Fantasy X. So you'd have to be able to have some kind of way for them to be able to breathe, and just basic scuba gear would be entirely way too bulky. So you'd have to have like some kind of rebreathers or something to populate oxygen, and then you would have to have some kind of bone conducting face mask telecom system, because you can't talk down in the water. You can't just yell out for a teammate. You would have to be able to find a way for your coaches to communicate to you and for you to communicate to the rest of your team while you're out there on the field, in the water. I don't know, when you're out there playing, right? I think the cost of that would be crazy, because you'd have to have some kind of, probably some new built technology to be able to make that work. The ball itself, like a normal ball, wouldn't work. If you ever put a normal ball, basketball or soccer ball or anything like that in a body of water, it floats, right? So this would have to be naturally buoyant. It would have to be able to glide through the water. You'd have to be able to throw it to your teammates and kick it, into the goal and everything. And so, like, the ball itself would be a very expensive cost to the game. It would have to kind of operate like a high-end drone. It would have to be able to dart, shoot back and forth. So I almost wonder if you would need it to be, like, motorized in some form or fashion. But then you're also talking about just, like, the way that the ball would need to curve in the water in order to pass, or, like, to do the jet shot, for example. The jet shot in Final Fantasy X is Tidus's father's, like, signature move, and it's a move that Tidus tries to learn in the game. And if you're good at being able to do it in the game, you can actually perform this shot when you're actually playing Blitzball in the game. But being able to do that, the ball would have to be able to curve in the water. And so I don't know if the way the Blitzball is made in the game would be how you would have to make it. I think when you're looking at, balls that in sports that curve a lot in trajectory, you'd have to like a golf ball, with all the little dimples in there. It would have to be something similar to that, I think. So, and then what about, like, for the fans watching, right? Because when you're underwater, and you have movement and you have contact, obviously the light's going to reflect off the water, and it's going to cause all the distortion and stuff like that from all the bubbles and the air pockets and stuff like that. So I think it would be very difficult for fans to be able to watch, especially when there's high contact. So I think you would have to have some kind of like AR system for fans to be able to watch and see where players are, where the ball is, and things like that. Maybe similar to like something they do in NASCAR, when you're watching and you can kind of see, or like even just racing games in general, and you see a map of where your car is and other cars are. I think you would have to have something like that to be able to broadcast this, while still being on kind of a 3D scale. So you think of like Formula One. I think Formula One does kind of the same thing, where they show you where people are on a map, and just the camera angles and stuff like that. I just, that's, again, we only talked about the production cost of building a stadium and filling a tank. The production cost for being able to actually broadcast this and air it and people to be able to see it and to have some kind of jumbotron and the camera angles and stuff like that, and they would all have to be specialty cameras built for Blitzball, because, like, in the NBA or NFL, you can just hide like a little micro camera anywhere and get these cool camera angles, but the equipment would have to obviously be waterproof. So but let's say you figured that out. Let's say you figured out the how to be able to build a stadium. You figured out the cost and how to be able to get players to actually play. What about the players themselves, right? So, most professional athletes, if not all, are insured in some form or fashion. So if they get hurt, like, there's money coming their way to protect them from the sport that they play. Blitzball would be like water polo meets rugby meets soccer. Like, it would be one of the most physically draining and taxing sports that we would have, and the health risks would be through the roof. Because not only are you talking about like potential injury for the roughness of the game itself, but you're talking about like decompression sickness from being underwater that long and things like that, lung over expansion. So the health risk alone would be crazy. And I think that like I don't know a lot about sports insurance, but I gotta imagine in certain sports where there's a high risk of pending death, so like possibly like MMA or things like that, that the insurance premiums are insane. Because the physicality of the sport in the game of Blitzball, again, players punch and they kick and they fight each other, and doing all this underwater just increases the risk of things like drowning and again, going back to like decompression sickness or lung over expansion and that kind of stuff. And then professional blitz fighters would likely be some of the highest paid athletes ever. Think like an NFL quarterback like on steroids or F1 drivers, like they would make probably $50+ million a year. And they would need that just to offset the cost, right? Of you know how dangerous this sport could actually be. So, when it comes to the finances of it, again, like I don't know if it's possible with how much money it would cost. But if there's one thing we as people are good at doing, it's figuring out a way to be able to make money for the things that we love, right? And certainly to overspend on those things we love. So I think if you could figure out the finances of it, which I think is probably, I think there's a 50-50 shot on whether or not people would actually be able to get that done. I think that it's feasible, right? But the game itself, again, the mechanics of the game, you would have to be able to have a ball that's naturally buoyant. You would have to be able to get players to be able to perform in like a 0G gravity type atmosphere, right? And then the thing too, like you can't just like in Blitzball, they don't just swim from one section to another. They dart and they're like from A to B, point A to point B, and they're super quick. And I almost think you would have to have like maybe a little bit of a jet propulsion gear on them to where they can start heading in a direction they have a little bit of a boost in order to get there, which again would just increase the likelihood of injury. And then again, like we talked about the physics of the ball, it would have to be a little bit different than what you get in Final Fantasy X when it comes to the actual design of the ball. But I think some of that's possible. Now the logistics itself, right? Is it possible, or excuse me, is it playable? Sticking to the underwater theme again, communication would be an issue. I think that you would have to figure out a way to be able to communicate, via headset to each other, and like I know this sounds crazy, and obviously like the technology's not there, right? But in a perfect world, you'd be able to like communicate telepathically to each other. And I don't know how obviously that would work, in the real world, but or you maybe have a helmet on, but then again, like if you have a helmet and that helmet was to crack or break, and the water was to get in, like you would kind of be screwed. So, vision, of course, like I think the players themselves would have to be able to have some kind of specialized vision equipment, and I think some of the augmented reality stuff that we're talking about for the fans to be able to watch, the players would have to have some of that as well to be able to see where other players are on the field or in play. Honestly, it would be reminiscent of having like a Iron Man helmet on, right? To be able to kind of have all that technology to be able to see. And then, in the game, players, they tackle each other. It's a collision sport, and this would be, again, like water polo meets MMA meets rugby, right? And it would be extremely exhausting, for players. And so to be able to do all that underwater with the fear of drowning, the risk of death, all that kind of stuff. I think that's the part that would be the hardest for players to be able to overcome, is how you would actually be able to physically play the game itself. So the game is pretty straightforward if you've played Final Fantasy X. It's not like it's a hard game, but obviously, whether players would be willing to be able to do that or not. I mean, people do far more for far less, I'm sure. So I think the players would be biggest obstacle to overcome. But if you were to be able to get players to be able to learn how to play blitzball, get on board with the cost of the equipment to actually be able to play, you figure out the logistics of that, and then you also get them to get cities to be able to pay for the stadiums itself, where would you put some teams? Right, so I have a couple of suggestions on where you would put teams. And again, to host a blitzball team, a city would need to have really three things: extreme wealth, advanced engineering, and then a culture of massive spectators. Like, you couldn't just have like Oklahoma City. I love Oklahoma City. I'm obviously I'm born and raised here in Oklahoma City. I love the Thunder. You couldn't have a blitzball team in Oklahoma City. Like, you don't have the people and the fan base to be able to make it work. And so you would have to be able to pour billions of dollars into having this spherical pool, this infrastructure, these stadiums, the fans. So only really alpha cities across the world would have the ability to actually be able to make this work. So I have a few in mind. And so a few cities that would make up the World Blitzball Council, if you will. First one's first. I think this is a no-brainer. It's Dubai. Like, the amount of money that's in Dubai is insane. And, like, if there was a city that would say, hey, let's test it out, let's build it and see if they will come, Dubai has that infrastructure. They have the money. They have the people. It's one of the more highest touristy cities in the entire world. So I think that Dubai is a no-brainer for this. So when you think of Luka, which is the main stadium there in Blitzball for Inspira, Dubai would be the Luka of the real world. It would be the place that, like, the Super Bowl of Blitzball would be played. Again, Dubai already holds the record for the world's deepest pool, so they're accustomed to be able to have that kind of underwater presence and experience. And they have a history of building like some of the most impressive structures in the entire world. So I think if there was a place that would undergo this and say, hey, we could do it, I think Dubai would be it. The second one, Tokyo, Japan. For a couple of reasons. Because if Blitzball was a sport that was made up and you never had any kind of context, I think that Tokyo would be a little bit further down this list for me than number two. But the fact is that Tokyo is one of the highest tech cities in the entire world. The vibe of Blitzball, the neon lights, the I guess the culture of the game, like it's all integrated there in Japan because Final Fantasy X originated there, right? So these are the developers of the game itself. So if we're talking about actually playing Blitzball itself as we know it from Final Fantasy X, I think Tokyo would be highly up there on the cities that would have to have a team. And of course, like, it makes sense. They have a ton of money. The fan base is there. People would go watch the game. And then with Japan being the home of Final Fantasy X, the origin, of Final Fantasy X, I think it just makes sense that Tokyo, Japan would be on there. And then a third team that I think would be, and this is obviously, I'm from the United States. If you're watching this or listening to this anywhere around out the country or around the world, Las Vegas. Like, Las Vegas here in the U.S. is the entertainment capital of the United States, right? It thrives on high stakes and expensive shows like Blitzball. A Blitzball stadium would fit in perfectly next to the Sphere in Las Vegas. Like, you have the room, you have the ability and infrastructure to be able to host the sport and to have fans come and check it out. The only thing that there would be an issue with, I think, would be the water issue, because sometimes I think that there have been some issues with droughts and stuff because you're in the middle of the fucking desert in Las Vegas, right? So even though I think it would be the main event city, I think that hosting Blitzball would be a little bit difficult from the water aspect of it, but I'm sure that could easily be figured out. Now for the other cities, there are several cities that you could potentially look at having a Blitzball team, right? But I thought with Vegas, it would be kind of fun to go ahead and just kind of take a look at, like, what would a team in Vegas look like, especially when you're talking about like a team mascot and things like that, right? So I think what's funny about a team in Vegas is the fact that you would have the world's largest water sport be played in the middle of the desert, right? So, which I think is kind of funny, and I think there are potential names that could go along and kind of play a part in that in regards to like what your mascots would be and that kind of stuff. So a couple that I have here, the Las Vegas Wells. So well in gambling is a high roller who bets millions, at casinos and things like that. And a blitzball, it's literally, an ocean giant, a well. So I think that could be a potential name. I think it would be a cool correlation between both Las Vegas and blitzball and the water sport part of it. Um, I think you could do like if you really wanted to be a little bit cheesy, you could do like something like the Area 51 Invaders or something like that to be able to play on the lore of Area 51 in Vegas and the alien aspect of it. I think you could have a little bit of fun with that, but I think it's a little bit more cheesy. The one that I thought like, and again, this is all like made up, like you're playing Madden, creating your own team, picking a city and picking in, just a template of a logo from it. But the Sin City Serpents is one that I came up with. So kind of leaning into the desert wildlife and the Sin City theme and nickname, I think you could have the Sin City Serpents with a mascot of like a rattlesnake or something, to be able to, that maybe is a little bit adapted with water fins and that kind of stuff. Kind of fits like the Viper aesthetic of Vegas sports. And then it also kind of, serpents, like that's a pretty edgy mascot, right? I think instead of a friendly face, you have a mascot that's a very sleek and robotic looking snake that is kind of ready to strike at the glass or the tank to be able to scare opposing fans, that kind of stuff. Like I think there's some things that you could do there with a Las Vegas themed mascot. So again, there are several other cities. Think of like Shanghai, London, that kind of stuff. I think there are a lot of other cities that could house a team, but the top three that came to mind for me was Dubai, Tokyo, and Las Vegas. So, for me, blitzball I think would be a fun sport. Personally, I when playing the game of Final Fantasy X, even though I enjoyed it and I enjoyed what blitzball was to them, playing blitzball on the game was probably one of my least favorite things to be able to do. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't be entertaining, but I just don't really care for like the mechanics of the game. Like I like in Final Fantasy X, you have the opportunity to be able to win your blitzball game that you're playing, to be able to bring a championship, to and have Waka, who's one of your characters, to be able to go out with a win where he's never won a game in his entire career. So I think that, but playing the game itself on the game, it really wasn't that entertaining to me. Doesn't mean that it wouldn't be in real life, but on the game itself, it was one of my least favorite parts of the game. But the vibe to it, like the energy that comes from it, just the opening again, going back to the opening of the game and the stadium's being filled with water and the fans are cheering and everything's electric, that's exciting. So, final verdict. Could blitzball be a real sport? I'm going to say, although I think you could figure out the mechanics of it, I think you could figure out athletes who would play it. If you're asking, could it be a real sport? Yes. Would it be? Absolutely not. I think it would just cost entirely way too much. And like, listen, the greedy are there. Like they would, if they think they can make money from it, they absolutely would. The problem is with current sports that make billions and billions and billions of dollars, it didn't start out that way. It wasn't like we threw in a billion and billions of dollars in hopes that a sport would develop and be able to make us money. It started out humbly and grew. The NFL started out with humble beginnings and grew into what it is now. And so I don't see a world where billionaires are putting up the money on a risk that a sport would be successful or not. And so, and honestly, we've had, other sports to try to come in and maybe not spend the same amount of money that blitzball would have to spend, but, has come in to try to create, a new sport and invest a lot of money in, and they haven't worked. Like the XFL, for example, very similar in what this would be in the design. XFL just didn't work. Like people just didn't care. You can't force the investment of the fans, and I think that would be the most difficult thing about starting up Blitzball. So, could you actually make it work? I think in a world you could. I think you could figure it out and make it actually work and be a real sport. Would it work? Would we do it? Absolutely not. So, but it's not all about me and what I thought. It's about you guys and what your thoughts are on Blitzball, and could it be possible? Throw in the comments below. Let me know. Do you think that Blitzball could work? Do you think it would work? Do you think we could actually see a world where there's really Blitzball being played across the globe? And if so, where would you put teams? What would you make the mascots? Do you think the Sin City Serpents is a good name? Do you think it's garbage? I don't care. I want to know your thoughts. So that's it for today's episode of the Benchwarmer Chatter. I want to thank you guys for sticking around. If you've listened to the podcast and you stuck around this long, just a genuine, heartfelt thank you from me to you. I know that life is busy and it's hard to make time for the things that we love. So the fact that you stuck around this long and listened to my fucking nonsense just means the absolute world to me. And again, thank you. Remember to like and subscribe, guys, and more importantly, share, because we want to be able to grow our community and make sure that people out there are watching and engaging in our community. And again, I just want to thank you guys. So I will catch you guys again at the same Batman Drew time on the same Batman Drew channel. Thanks, guys.